Welcome back to another deep dive. Today we are actually going to be looking at Alolan Dugtrio. So Alolan Dugtrio is quite interesting because he has some things that put him really high up in my regards, and then he has some things that put him really low in my regards. So let's go ahead and jump in. So Alolan Dugtrio, actually as a counterpart to regular Dugtrio, Cantonian Dugtrio if you will, is a Steel and Ground type Pokemon. He's actually going to have a max CP at level 40 with 15 across the board on his IVs at 1897. That is always highly encouraging to see. The fact that you have a Pokemon so close to 1500 at max means that they're probably going to be able to flex out their stats really well and perform quite nicely. Now, he actually does achieve a 1500 CP at level 35.5 if you have 0 on attack, 5 on defense, and 0 on stamina. Now, I'm sure there are other combinations that get you to 1500. This is just one of those that I found. He does rank 129th in terms of bulk, which, here again, out of 160 participants in the Tempest Cup, that's kind of low. Actually, no, that's really low. I don't like the fact that he's so low in bulk. He actually ranks 116th in terms of stat product, and in particular, there's one stat that really just tanks this, and that's his HP stat. His HP stat is just really underwhelming. In most of my testing, his stats usually equate to about 85 HP, which is really low. And that just really hinders him when it comes to his actual bulk and his stat product. At 1500 CP, he does actually achieve around a 67.25 of his max potential, which is great. I love the fact that that is way above 50, and I think that it actually works out very well in his favor. So let's actually move on to his moves here. So, being that he is a Steel and Ground type Pokemon, he actually can only learn either Steel or Ground type moves, which I think is actually a good thing considering all of his moveset, no matter which one you choose, will end up getting a stab bonus. Now, for fast moves, he actually does have Metal Claw, which actually gains 3 energy per turn and does 2.5 damage per turn. Then he also has Mud Slap, not Mud Shot. I wish it was Mud Shot, which gains 2.67 energy per turn and does 3 damage per turn. So in my testing, Metal Claw definitely does perform better. It allows him to get to these charge moves way quicker. Even though it does forfeit half of a damage every turn, it does just end up giving him a slight better edge when it comes to getting to these charge moves. Speaking of charge moves, he actually has Earthquake, which takes 65 energy to fire, does 120 damage, and then has a damage to energy ratio of 1.85. Great, I love Earthquake. He then also has Mud Bomb, which takes 40 energy to charge, 55 when you fire it, and does a 1.38 damage per energy ratio. Lastly, he has Iron Head, which takes 50 energy, does 70 damage at a 1.4 damage per energy ratio. Now, in most of my testing, what I found out about Alolan Dugtrio is that Iron Head is kind of the outlier here. While it's not a bad move in any kind of way, it actually does have a more efficient damage per energy ratio than Mud Bomb here. It's just that, unfortunately, it's kind of in the middle of the road when it comes to Earthquake and Mud Bomb. So you end up having this weird scenario where it's just not really preferred. Earthquake is going to be doing just insane amount of damage, which I adore it for that. And Mud Bomb is actually going to be able to break some shields for you. And considering that Alolan Dugtrio is so low on the stat side of things, you're definitely going to need to be able to get these charge moves out as quickly as possible because you're just not going to be able to get very many of them anyways. So let's actually move on to our positives and negatives as we do in every video. Let's actually start with our negatives here. So the first thing that I actually wrote down is that Alolan Dugtrio is just extremely flaky. The fact that his stats are so low and he has such a small pool for HP, he just really gets hindered whenever it comes to actually coming up against most Pokemon. He's just not going to be able to withstand too many shots, and especially with such low HP, if you happen to go up against anything that's going to be super effective, it's literally going to tear through you. Our next negative thing is actually he only has 4 weaknesses, but those 4 weaknesses are very, very important. So the 2 that I wrote down that are really big is ground. And the reason that I wrote down that he has a weakness to ground is because that means that he's going to lose in a lot of the mirror matches for ground versus ground type Pokemon. That kind of sucks. He can't even hold his own against ground types. And then he's actually weak to water as well. So the Mud Boys are just going to be a horrible matchup for him. Lapras is going to be a horrible matchup. Dugong, any of the top tier Pokemon that are ice and water that have access to water moves are going to be a very big threat to you. Lastly, on the negative side, he loses based on PV Poke's, like, all Tempest Cup match Pokemon. You can go in there and you can literally just put your Pokemon with a preferred moveset up against every possible Pokemon except Lugia for some reason. I always have trouble finding Lugia. Going up against every Tempest Cup Pokemon, he loses 57.6% of the time. Not good. On to our positives. He actually, with the ground and steel typing, he actually has 10 resistances. Some huge resistances in there as well. He takes like 0.2 times damage from poison, which I know that's not relevant at all, but it's just kind of crazy. So the fact that he has so many resistances really can set him up to be decent. If you play your cards right and you know your matchups really well, you can actually use Alolan Dugtrio in several scenarios where it works out in your favor, and you can do really good with him. The other and only other positive thing that I have for Alolan Dugtrio is a really interesting one. He's actually tied for first place when it comes to the highest attack stat in the cup. So Honchkrow and Alolan Dugtrio both share the same attack stat, and being that he has the highest attack in the cup really sets him up to be really punishing if you play your cards right. But it's at the cost that you have to be careful with it. It's going to be fragile. The fact that he has the top position in terms of attack whenever it comes to all the Tempest Cup Pokemon really means that he's going to be a threat, but you're going to have to play your cards really well. And if you slip up and accidentally put him into a scenario where he's going to be weak to something, then it's really, really going to turn the tide where you could have had the upper hand, but now it's not going to go in your favor, more than likely. So let's actually get on to some matchups here. So in all of these videos, I always put all of the subjects of the video up against the top 10 bulkiest Pokemon in the Tempest Cup, and this one was kind of underwhelming. So Alolan Dugtrio actually loses to Steelix, Tropius, Jumpluff, Dugong, Altaria, Claydol, Lapras, Lantern, and Lugia. Yeah, so we actually end up losing a lot. The only matchup that he actually has a favorable position in is up against Regice, which, like I've said, Regice is kind of up in the air at the moment. That actually means that even though you're going to lose 57.6% of the matchups that you go into, you are going to basically lose to all the top meta picks. So that means that this is really not even kind of an anti-meta either. It's just kind of one of those in the middle of the road kind of situations where he's just not living up to what he could be. And saying that, I can't recommend Alolan Dugtrio for the Tempest Cup. I just don't think it's going to work out. The fact that he's so low on his stat product and his bulk, the fact that he only has 85 HP, I honestly can't think of a great scenario to put him in unless maybe he was a lead, but even as a lead, I don't think that he has a really good situation, because being weak to water and to ground, you're going to be basically exposing yourself right out of the gate. If you have him as a mid, maybe it works out based on their team. If you know that they have some real bad weaknesses to ground, then maybe you can throw that in. But as a closer, I highly would not recommend that, based just solely on the fact that he has 85 HP and that he goes down. If you literally sneeze, he blows away. So I definitely think that Alolan Dugtrio is a hard pass for myself this month in the Tempest Cup. But let me know what you guys think down in the comments below. I would really like to hear your opinion because I like Alolan Dugtrio. I don't think that he's going to be good in this cup at all. So that is actually going to be it for today, guys. Thank you so much for watching. If you like to like videos, make sure you do that. If you don't, you can be that guy. Otherwise, let me know what you have to say down in the comments below. And if you have any kind of suggestions for Pokemon that you want a deep dive on, please let me know. I'll be happy to look into them for you. So until our next video, I will catch you then.